Flight attendant kicked out Black CEO's Sun minutes. Later, his dad grounded the airline. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. You're in the wrong seat, young man. The words cracked through the quiet cabin like thunder. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Nicole, the flight attendant, leaned in perfect hair, perfect smile, voice edged like glass. Her manicured finger pointed at the young black man by the window seat 2 amperes. The sunlight hit her badge just right, as if authority had a shine. Jordan Hayes blinked, pulling one earbud loose. "Excuse me." His tone was calm, polite. Nicole repeated slower each word, a small blade. "You're in the wrong seat." A man across the aisle shifted in discomfort. A woman whispered, "Here we go again." The tension moved through the cabin like static. Nicole crossed her arms. "Either move to coach or I'll have security handle it before we close the doors." Jordan reached for his boarding pass, crisp official printed clear, seat 2 amperes. He held it out. She didn't look. "Fake," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "We've seen this trick before." Gasps. The sound of phones clicking on. Someone started recording. Jordan didn't flinch. He simply said, "Then check your system." Nicole's smile hardened. "The system doesn't make mistakes. People like you do." Even the hum of the engine seemed to stop. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to Jordan. He turned toward the window, not out of defeat but focus. The reflection showed resolve, not shame. He'd heard that tone before in banks, in lobbies, in rooms where respect was rationed by appearance. But today was different. 3 rows back, a man closed his tablet slowly. Calm eyes, tailored suit, silent authority. Marcus Hayes, CEO of Horizon Air, Jordan's father. The plane hadn't taken off yet, but justice was already taxiing down the runway. Nicole stood her ground voice, clipped her posture, radiating control that wasn't really there. "Sir, if you don't move, you'll be escorted off before departure." Jordan looked up, eyes steady. "Then do what you need to do." He didn't shout, didn't plead, just said it calm enough to make the silence louder. Passengers began to whisper. A young white man in a blazer leaned toward his wife. "Why is she pressing him like that?" "Because she can," the woman murmured. Nicole turned sharply. "Phones away, everyone. This is a private matter." From row 5, a woman in a red scarf whispered, "Not anymore, it isn't." A dozen screens glowed back to life. The quiet rebellion had begun. Jordan stayed still, his boarding pass still in his hand edges, torn from Nicole's grip. The ink shimmered under the cabin, light proof she refused to see. Behind him, Brian, another attendant, appeared, younger, smug. "Problem here," Nicole gestured sharply. "He's refusing instructions. Claims this seat is his." Brian laughed once. "Of course he does." That laugh. It was small, but it sliced deeper than the words. Jordan finally spoke again. "You keep saying policy. Maybe you should ask who wrote it." Nicole's brows lifted. "What's that supposed to mean?" He didn't answer, just met her stare until she blinked first. In row 3, Marcus watched. Every detail, every slight, the tremor in his son's fingers, the unearned confidence in the attendant's tone. He'd seen it before in reports, in complaints buried under training errors. He'd warned corporate last quarter. They hadn't listened. He reached for his phone under the seat, fingers moving with surgical precision. One message. 5 words, protocol 8. Verify cabin staff. A soft vibration buzzed in his palm, confirmation. Up front, the captain's voice broke over the intercom, smooth but distant. "Cabin crew, prepare for final boarding." Nicole nodded briskly, still facing Jordan. "Last chance, out or off." Jordan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "You should really check the manifest before you embarrass the wrong people." Nicole smirked. "Oh, I know exactly who you are." Jordan tilted his head. "Do you?" From the jump seat, Mia, the trainee attendant, glanced at her tablet. Her brows knit. Something flashed green on the screen. Passenger verified, priority access, Hayes, J. She looked up, panic flickering across her face. "Nicole," she said softly, his ticket just confirmed. Nicole cut her off. "Stay out of this." But the damage was done, because 3 rows back, Marcus Hayes had just stood up. and the weight of every bad decision in that cabin was about to land. The sound of Marcus rising was quiet, but it carried. Leather-creaked papers rustled, a few passengers froze mid-sentence. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. Power rarely does. Nicole turned at the movement, irritation flashing. "Sir, please remain seated. We haven't closed the cabin door yet." Marcus adjusted his cufflinks, gaze calm. "No, you haven't," he said evenly. "But you're about to close something much bigger." Jordan turned his head slightly, realizing. His father's voice always carried a weight that reset a room. Even now it did. Nicole blinked, confused but still clinging to protocol. "Sir, who are you exactly?" Marcus gave a small, measured smile. "Someone who pays for more than a ticket." Brian stepped forward, puffing his chest. "Sir, if you're interfering, we'll have to." Marcus's phone vibrated before he could finish. He lifted it just enough to glance at the screen. "Compliance alert, active. Cabin under review. Perfect timing." He looked up again, tone low but certain. "My name's Marcus Hayes. I'm the CEO of Horizon Air." It wasn't loud, but it landed like an announcement through the intercom. A ripple of disbelief rolled through the cabin. A passenger whispered, "Wait, the Marcus Hayes," someone else gasped. Nicole's confidence faltered. "That's impossible," she stammered. Mia, still holding her tablet, swallowed hard. "It's not," she whispered. His name just synced with the internal roster. She turned the screen so Brian could see it. Owner Access Hayes M. Nicole's face went pale. Brian's smirk cracked. "Sir, we didn't know." Marcus cut him off gently. "You didn't ask. You assumed." He gestured toward his son. "And you humiliated a passenger before verifying his identity. That's not policy. That's bias." No one spoke. Even the engines seemed to hush in shame. Marcus took a breath, voice even, but edged with command. "Captain," he said, projecting just enough to carry through the aisle. "This flight isn't departing until I say so." From the cockpit, a voice crackled. "Mr. Hayes, I understand." Standing by. Nicole blinked rapidly, struggling for words. "Sir, we didn't mean any disrespect." Marcus met her, gaze steady, not cruel. "Intentions don't erase impact." Jordan exhaled slowly, tension easing from his shoulders. He hadn't wanted this to go public. But the silence had gone on too long. Marcus turned to Mia. "What's your name?" "Mia Lang, sir." He nodded. "You spoke up. That matters. You'll be hearing from HR for the right reasons." Nicole's lips parted, desperate now. "Please, Mr. Hayes, can we just—" He raised a hand. "No. You had your chance to listen. Now you'll learn." The cabin door was still open, sunlight flooding the aisle. Yet everyone inside knew the real flight, the one between arrogance and accountability, had already left the ground. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence filled the cabin like gravity, quiet, inescapable. He turned slightly, his tone calm but surgical. "Captain, delay departure. I'm invoking internal review protocol." The captain's reply trembled through the intercom. "Copy that, sir." Holding position. Passengers exchanged glances. A few started recording again, no longer in secret. Nicole stood, frozen hands clasped in front of her apron. "Mr. Hayes, please, this will ruin us. It was a misunderstanding." Marcus's gaze stayed on her, level and unblinking. "You called my son a fraud. You tore up his pass. And you said people like you. Tell me, Nicole, what kind of people is that?" Her throat worked, but no sound came. Brian shifted behind her, face tight. "We just followed procedure." "No," Marcus interrupted softly. "You followed prejudice and called it procedure." The silence after that was thick enough to feel. Even the passengers in the back stopped whispering. Jordan stared ahead, jaw-clenched eyes, low, a mix of shame and pride flickering together. His father had always said power is quiet until it has to speak. Marcus took his phone again, tapped once. "Carla," he said, voice low. On the other end, his assistant answered instantly. "Yes, sir. Activate ground sequence for Horizon. Flight 241. A pause. Then confirmed, sir. Flight suspended pending executive audit. Crew names logged." Brian's mouth fell open. "You can't." Marcus cut in. "I can. And I have." Mia stood near the galley, wide-eyed. "Sir," she said quietly, "should I inform passengers?" Marcus gave her a nod. "Yes, but tell them the truth. They deserve to know." Nicole's composure cracked completely. "You're really going to destroy our careers over a misunderstanding?" Marcus tilted his head slightly. "No. You did that the moment you chose humiliation over humanity." A murmur spread down the aisle. One man in row 6 began clapping slowly. Another joined, then another. Within seconds, a wave of applause filled the cabin, not loud but steady. Nicole's lips trembled. "Mr. Hayes, please. I didn't know who he was." Marcus's expression didn't soften. That's exactly the problem. You treated him based on who you thought he wasn't. He turned to Jordan. You all right, son? Jordan nodded once. I am now. Marcus looked back to the attendants. Effective immediately, you're relieved of duty. Security will escort you from this plane. You may contact HR after formal notice. No shouting, no chaos, just finality. Outside on the tarmac, a ground vehicle began moving toward the aircraft. The captain's voice came again, steadier now. Mr. Hayes Corporate has acknowledged your directive. Crew suspension confirmed. Marcus exhaled, slowly gaze, sweeping the cabin, every witness, every phone raised. Then he spoke one last line before sitting back down. Respect isn't optional on my planes. It's policy. The door to the cabin opened with a hiss of pressurized air. A pair of airport security officers stepped inside, not aggressive, just uncertain. Everyone could feel the weight of the moment. Nicole's face had lost all its color. She straightened her uniform, her voice trembling. Officers, this is a misunderstanding. I can explain. Marcus didn't turn to her. He spoke to them directly, voice even and absolute. You won't need to. This flight is grounded pending review. I've already notified the board and FAA liaison. The older officer nodded once. Understood, Mr. Hayes. Then he looked at Nicole and Brian. Ma'am, sir, you'll need to step off the aircraft. Brian blinked. You can't be serious. We didn't do anything illegal. Marcus's eyes flicked toward him. Not illegal, just unacceptable. They hesitated, caught between embarrassment and disbelief. Passengers filmed silently faces half lit by phone screens. It wasn't cruelty, it was accountability. Mia stepped forward carefully. Sir, passengers are asking what's happening. Should I tell them to deboard? Marcus shook his head. No. Give them refreshments. They'll have a new crew shortly. Nicole turned to him, eyes wide with panic. Please, Mr. Hayes, this can ruin everything I've worked for. He looked at her with the calm of a man who had built empires from silence. And yet in 5 minutes you nearly ruined everything this company stands for. Jordan shifted in his seat, uneasy with the spotlight. He whispered, Dad, maybe that's enough. Marcus's gaze softened for a second. Justice isn't revenge, son. It's correction. He stood and addressed the cabin, his voice carrying like the hum of the engines that never started. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. You've witnessed behavior that doesn't reflect who we are. Horizon Air will never let prejudice fly under its name. A woman in seat 4C called out. Thank you for saying that. Applause rose again, hesitant at first, then fuller, genuine. Nicole stood motionless, tears welling as security guided her toward the aisle. The captain, now visible at the cockpit door, lowered his eyes as she passed. I'm sorry, he murmured. She didn't answer. Marcus waited until the door closed behind them. The silence that followed was heavy but clean, like a wound beginning to close. He turned back to Mia. You did the right thing. Courage doesn't need rank. She swallowed hard. Thank you, sir. Jordan looked out the window, the tarmac bright beneath the morning Sunday. You really grounded the whole flight, Marcus gave a faint smile. No, I grounded arrogance. Then he leaned back in his seat, hands clasped as the plane remained, still proof that sometimes stopping the world for 5 minutes is exactly how you move it forward. The cabin was still like the air after a storm. The tension had drained, replaced by something heavier, reflection. The passengers whispered quietly, phones lowered now, faces thoughtful instead of hungry for drama. What they'd just seen wasn't entertainment. It was a reckoning. Marcus remained seated beside his son. For the first time since standing up, his shoulders eased. He wasn't smiling, but the fury behind his calm had settled into purpose. He turned to Jordan. Do you understand why I didn't stop it sooner? Jordan hesitated. Because you wanted them to reveal themselves, Marcus nodded once. Exactly. Prejudice hides behind manners until pressure removes the mask. Today we saw the mask fall. He looked down the aisle where Nicole and Brian had stood moments before, now empty. They weren't monsters, he said quietly, just blind to their own bias. But blindness doesn't excuse harm. Mia stood a few rows ahead, still shaken but composed. She was answering passengers' questions softly, offering bottled water and reassurance. Every gesture trembled slightly, but she kept going. Marcus noticed. He called out Miss Lang. She turned startled. Yes, sir. He gestured to the empty jump seat. Take a breath. You did more in 5 minutes than some people do in a career. She blinked, eyes glistening. I just told the truth. That Marcus said is leadership. From row 6, a middle-aged man spoke up, voice rough with emotion. My daughter's a flight attendant. She's been through the same thing, different faces, same story. What you did today matters. Marcus gave a small nod. Then make sure she knows this company is changing. Starting now. Jordan leaned back, exhaling. You really meant it, policy changes, Marcus looked at him. Every story like this costs trust, and trust is worth more than any jet in our fleet. He took out his phone again, opened a message thread labeled Ethics Board. Effective immediately schedule bias training for all flight operations staff. Require third-party review. Public statement by noon. He hit send. One line of text, but it carried the force of an entire corporation shifting course. The captain's voice came through the intercom once more, this time steadier. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. A replacement crew is boarding. We'll be ready for takeoff shortly. Marcus looked out the window, sunlight washing over the wing, bright and merciless. He whispered almost to himself, "Sunlight's the best disinfectant." Jordan turned to him, half smiling. "You sound like Grandpa." Marcus's eyes softened. He taught me that silence fixes nothing. As the new crew entered, passengers greeted them with quiet nods. The energy in the cabin had changed, lighter, humbled. For the first time since boarding, the plane felt ready to fly. But what truly took off that morning wasn't an aircraft, it was accountability. And this time it had wings. Engines hummed back to life, a low vibration running through the floor. Outside, the morning sun stretched over the tarmac like a quiet witness. For the first time in an hour, the cabin felt balanced again, heavier with truth, lighter with clarity. The new flight attendants moved efficiently respectful, but careful their tone, softer eyes, steadier. No one barked orders. No one raised voices. Every gesture carried the echo of what had just happened. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and tension cooling down. Marcus leaned back, fastening his seatbelt. He didn't check his phone, didn't open his laptop. For once, the CEO wasn't working. He was watching. Watching how accountability looked when done right. Not dramatic, not cruel, just necessary. Beside him, Jordan adjusted his hoodie, exhaling long. "Feels weird," he said quietly, "being the reason a flight stopped." Marcus shook his head. "You weren't the reason, their choices were." Jordan thought for a moment, then looked down. Still, everyone saw. Marcus's tone softened. "Let them. Sometimes visibility is its own justice." 2 rows up, Mia passed by checking seatbelts. When she reached them, Marcus stopped her. "Miss Lang." She turned, straightening. He said, "I'd like you transferred to corporate training. You'll help rewrite the passenger engagement policy." Her eyes widened. "Sir, I'm just a trainee." "Not anymore," Marcus replied. "You're exactly what this company needs to remember empathy before efficiency." She blinked hard, nodding, barely holding back emotion. "Thank you, sir." He smiled faintly. "Don't thank me. Just keep being the reason the next Jordan doesn't have to record what happened to him." The captain's voice came through the speakers. "Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff." Marcus closed his eyes. The engines roared gently, power surging beneath their feet. As the plane began to roll, passengers looked out their windows, not at clouds or skyline, but at the ground they were leaving behind. A man whispered, "Feels different now." A woman replied softly, "It should." Jordan stared out the window. "You ever get tired of fighting this?" Marcus's answer came after a pause. "Every day. But then I remember we don't fight for applause. We fight so the next person doesn't have to." The wheels lifted. Gravity loosened. The city shrank below. Yet somehow what rose with that plane wasn't just metal, it was a message. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it ascends quietly. Seatbelt fastened, hands, steady eyes forward. And as Horizon Flight 241 climbed through the clouds, Marcus Hayes looked toward the light breaking across the sky and said under his breath, "Now this is how you rise." 30,000 feet in the air, the cabin had settled into that mid-flight hush, where engines hum like white noise and time blurs. But today, silence didn't mean peace. It meant processing. Every passenger carried the echo of what they'd seen, a power shift wrapped in calm. Marcus sat quietly, his reflection in the window merging with the endless blue. For years, he'd fought battles in boardrooms, on screens, through memos and legal drafts. But this was different. This was public, immediate, human. Jordan beside him scrolled through his phone, watching clips already circulating online. The video had spread the confrontation, the reveal, the grounding. Comments poured in faster than the refresh icon could keep up. He turned the screen toward his father. "It's everywhere. Trending number 3. Marcus didn't even look. Then let it trend. The world needs to see what accountability looks like when it wears a suit and speaks softly. A passenger across the aisle, the woman in the red scarf, leaned over slightly. "Mr. Hayes?" she asked hesitantly. Marcus met her eyes. "Yes, I just wanted to say Thank you. Most people would have yelled or called lawyers. You just stood up. He smiled faintly. Sometimes silence speaks louder when you've built something that can't be ignored. Jordan chuckled under his breath. You sound like a quote page already. Marcus turned to him. Maybe, but remember, this sun control isn't about volume. It's about precision. The pilot's voice came through steady and warm. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached cruising altitude. Smooth skies ahead. A ripple of laughter went through the cabin, small but real. For the first time that day, people exhaled without tension. Mia approached again, balancing a tray of water. She stopped at their row. Mr. Hayes, she said softly. The crew wanted to apologize again. The captain, too. Marcus nodded. They'll get their chance in writing. For now, tell them to focus on getting everyone home safe. She nodded, then hesitated. Sir, do you ever get used to moments like this? He looked out the window again, clouds forming like soft continents below. You never get used to injustice, Mia. You just get better at dismantling it. Jordan watched his father's silent admiration flickering behind his eyes. You ever think about what Grandpa would say if he saw all this? Marcus smiled. He'd probably say, about time you grounded something that deserved it. The two of them laughed quietly. The tension finally cracked open, not with noise, but with relief. Down the aisle, a little girl asked her mother, Mommy, why did everyone clap earlier? Her mother whispered back, because sometimes the good guys win, baby. The engines hummed steady. The sky stretched infinite. And high above the noise, one truth held firm dignity: doesn't ask for permission to fly. 2 hours into the flight, the rhythm of the engines became a steady heartbeat. Most passengers had reclined their screens, glowing faintly in the dim cabin light. But Marcus Hayes wasn't resting. His phone buzzed with a secure notification. Corporate line, Carla Bennett, Chief Operations Officer. He answered quietly. Carla. Her voice came crisp through the earpiece. Marcus, the incident footage has gone viral. 42 million views in 2 hours. News outlets are requesting statements. I expected as much, he replied. How's the board reacting? A beat of hesitation. Mixed. Some are panicking about optics. Others are calling it a defining moment for leadership. Marcus allowed himself a slow exhale. Good. Let them choose which kind of company they want to represent. Also, Carla added carefully, the crew you grounded has already contacted their union. They're claiming overreach. Marcus's tone didn't change. I didn't fire them for bias. I grounded them for conduct. There's a difference, and our documentation will make that clear. Across the aisle, Jordan was half asleep, his hoodie pulled up, unaware of the ripple their mourning had sent through an entire industry. Carla's voice softened. Marcus, I've worked beside you for 15 years. I've seen you walk into storms and walk out standing. But this is global. He looked out the window where the clouds thinned into endless horizon. Then maybe it's time the sky saw what leadership looks like. A pause. Then you've got support here. The team's drafting a press statement under your name. Marcus shook his head. No PR spin, no corporate apology template. I'll write it myself when we land. Carla smiled audibly through the line. That's what I hoped you'd say. He ended the call and sat back, the faint hum of altitude pressing against the glass beside him. The clouds looked calm, deceptive, like people who think silence means safety. A flight attendant approached cautiously, one from the new crew. Mr. Hayes, she said. The captain asked if you'd like to speak to the passengers after landing. Marcus considered it. Yes, but not as their CEO. As a father, Jordan stirred, blinking awake. You're still working, Marcus smiled. Justice doesn't nap. Jordan grinned sleepily. You think Mom's seen the video? Marcus chuckled. She probably texted me 3 times already. But I'm not checking until we land. The intercom chimed. Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our descent into New York. Please fasten your seatbelts. Marcus glanced down the aisle at the quiet faces, the unspoken unity. No speeches, no slogans, just shared understanding. Outside the window, the world below came back into focus. Runways, roads, rivers, small from above, yet vast enough to hold change. He closed his eyes for a moment and whispered to himself, let them record this landing. Some descents are louder than takeoffs. The landing gear unfolded with a dull thud beneath the cabin floor. The plane dipped through a veil of gray clouds, city lights glimmering like scattered glass below. The hum of the engines softened into gravity's pull. Passengers straightened fastening belts and glancing toward Marcus Hayes as if his calm might keep the aircraft steady. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, composed but reverent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York. On behalf of Horizon Air, thank you for your patience and for witnessing something important today. A few passengers exchanged looks. Someone clapped once tentative, then others joined soft but sincere. It wasn't applause for the landing. It was for everything that had happened before it. Marcus looked out the window as the runway lights streaked past. "Smooth," he murmured. Jordan grinned beside him. "Guess you can ground a plane and still land on time." Marcus smirked faintly. "Timing's everything, especially when the world's watching." The aircraft slowed, rolling toward the gate. Phones buzzed back to life, notifications pouring in, news alerts, social media tags, statements already forming headlines. Black CEO grounds flight over racial profiling incident. Respect is policy, says Horizon Air chairman. Jordan read one aloud. "You're trending again." Marcus didn't respond. He just loosened his tie, unhurried. Let them talk. The noise fades. The change doesn't. As the plane came to a full stop, the seatbelt light chimed off. Passengers began to rise, moving slower than usual, their eyes lingering on the man who had turned a humiliating moment into history. A woman in business attire leaned over. "Mr. Hayes, that was more than leadership. That was courage." Marcus shook his head gently. "Courage is easy when you know the truth's on your side." Mia appeared once more, now steadier, professional, but proud. "Sir Media's already outside the gate. Do you want an escort through a private exit?" He looked at Jordan. "No. We walk out with everyone else." The aisle filled. People whispered, nodded, smiled quietly. No one pushed ahead. The crowd parted naturally, leaving a small path toward the door. Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Remember this," he said softly. "Dignity doesn't need a spotlight. It makes its own light." They stepped into the jet bridge together, cool air rushing in from the terminal vents. Flashes from waiting cameras flickered at the far end. Marcus didn't shield his face. He walked straight, calm eyes forward. Behind him, the new crew followed, led by Mia, proof that transformation doesn't need a press release, only witnesses. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Hayes, why didn't you keep it private?" He paused just long enough to answer, "Because silence keeps systems comfortable. I'm not here for comfort. I'm here for change." Then he kept walking, the echo of his steps mixing with the hum of the terminal, quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. The terminal at gate B14 had transformed into a stage. Cameras blinked, microphones stretched forward like metal flowers. Reporters jostled, each trying to be the first to capture a quote that would define the morning. Marcus Hayes didn't stop to pose. He never did. His stride was measured, coat over his arm, Jordan just behind him. But when a young journalist barely out of college called out, "Mr. Hayes, what do you say to people claiming this was overreaction?" he turned. The terminal hushed. Marcus looked at her then, at the semicircle of cameras waiting for conflict. "You call it overreaction," he said evenly. "I call it overdue." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The reporter lowered her mic, but Marcus wasn't finished. If stopping a plane to stop discrimination feels drastic, maybe the problem isn't the reaction, it's how long we've accepted the cause. A few passengers who'd been on the flight had gathered behind the ropes. Some held their phones up, others just watched. One man said quietly, "He's right," and his voice carried enough for others to nod. Jordan watched his father with a mixture of awe and understanding. He'd seen him in board meetings, on investor calls, under pressure. But never like this, never this personal. A second journalist shouted, "Will the attendants be fired?" Marcus shook his head. "That's not my goal. They'll face the same system they ignored, the one that protects fairness. Retraining, not revenge." "Then what is your goal, sir?" He paused, then said simply, "To make sure the next black passenger doesn't have to prove he belongs where he paid to be." The silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Mia emerged from the gate area, clutching a small folder. "Sir," she said softly, "Corporate Communications has prepared a holding statement. Would you like to review it before they release it?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Delete it. We'll release something better." He stepped forward, turned slightly toward the nearest camera, and said, "This isn't just about one flight. This is about every door that closes on assumption. Every voice that's told to wait its turn. Today, we didn't wait. We corrected course." A murmur of approval swept through the space. Someone started clapping again, slow, genuine. Within seconds, others joined. Jordan leaned closer. "You know they're going to turn this into headlines about the powerful CEO standing up for his son, right?" Marcus glanced at him, eyes sharp with quiet conviction. Then they missed the story. "It's not about power. It's about principle." As he turned to leave a woman in uniform, another flight attendant, middle-aged, eyes kind, stepped forward from the crowd. "Mr. Hayes," she said softly, "my crew watched the footage. Thank you. You didn't just ground a flight. You grounded arrogance." Marcus nodded once the faintest smile crossing his face. Then let's make sure it never takes off again. He and Jordan walked toward the exit as flashes erupted behind them, each one capturing more than a moment, each one recording the sound of dignity reclaiming its place in the sky. Outside, the terminal dawn had broken fully clean light spilling across the runway, washing everything in quiet absolution. The chaos behind them faded into the low hum of engines and morning chatter. Marcus and Jordan walked side by side toward the waiting car, neither in a rush. The driver opened the door, but Marcus paused before getting in. Cameras still lingered at a distance, unsure if the moment was over. It wasn't. He turned hands in his pockets, voice steady. Every industry he began thinks it runs on efficiency, but truth is it runs on respect. You lose that you lose everything. A few reporters raised their mics again, but he didn't wait for questions. He kept speaking, gaze fixed on the skyline beyond the runway. This morning wasn't about punishing two people. It was about confronting a pattern. One small act of arrogance repeated 1,000 times becomes policy. And if we're not careful, we end up normalizing cruelty disguised as professionalism. Jordan watched him silently, realizing this wasn't a speech, it was a statement for history. Marcus' continued, voice lower now. When I grounded that flight, I wasn't stopping travel. I was stopping tradition, the kind that tells certain people to wait to prove to apologize for existing. The wind picked up, carrying the faint echo of planes taking off in the distance. He glanced toward them. The sky doesn't care about color. Neither should we. He turned to Jordan, eyes softening. You handled yourself with grace. I'm proud of you. Jordan smiled faintly. I just sat there, Dad. No, Marcus said, you stayed composed when the world tried to shake you. That's strength most people never learn. A small crowd of passengers exiting the terminal caught sight of them. One woman lifted her phone for a photo, hesitant. Marcus gave a short nod, allowing it. Some stories he knew were meant to be shared. As they reached the car, Jordan asked, You think anything will really change? Marcus opened the door, then looked back at the airport behind them. Glass, steel, and thousands of unseen choices waiting to be made differently. It already has, he said. Change starts the second someone stops pretending not to see. He got in the door, closing with a quiet click that sounded more final than any applause. Through the tinted glass, the runway shimmered in the morning heat. Planes lifted into the sky, one after another, their contrails stretching like promises. Marcus's reflection merged with the clouds outside. His voice, calm and certain, filled the stillness inside the car. I don't need to film justice, he said. I am the result when it finally lands. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving behind the echo of one simple truth. Power isn't proven by how loudly you speak, but by how silently you correct the world around you. And somewhere above, another Horizon air flight rose into the light, this time carrying a little more humility in its wings.